Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 25 of the Classic Rock Podcast. For those about to pod, we salute you. Yes, 25, Brian. In this episode, we go back in time to 1998 for my year in rock. We have a rummage around and looking for hidden gems, and we also take a look at the best of Scottish music, as it was recently Burns Night. So without further ado, here he is, the man who holds the Guinness World Record for the longest time at university. Here's Brian.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. One Take. Mr. One Take in the intro, Rogers. Hi, Matt.
Just call me One Take.
One Take. One Take.
Yeah.
Well done, you.
What can I? Is that the intro tape still going? Or have you switched it off now?
I've switched it off now.
Oh, okay. So, what's new? What's new in the world of Brian?
What's new in the world? Lots going on. Obviously, last episode, if you remember, we were outraged that Judas Priest.
Oh yes,
Judas Priest. We're going to continue as a 4-piece. And this episode, the Priests have reversed their decision, and Andy Sneap's back in the band, and they're now a 5-piece.
Indeed, I like to think we played a part in that.
I think so.
I think so. They must have, someone in their organisation in the Judas Priest empire must have heard our podcast and thought, it's not going down well, this 4-piece stuff.
Exactly.
Better go back to 5-piece. No, it's good. I think there was quite a lot of disgruntled fans, I think you could say, because as we said last time, they were a 5-piece. They should be a 5-piece. Their sound is built on a 5-piece 2-guitar setup.
Yeah,
and so it will continue. So that's good. So you're not in the frame then, sadly. You didn't get the nod.
And obviously, as you know,
did you buy those leather trousers just in case?
I've got leather trousers. I've got leather trousers anyway.
Have you?
Yeah.
There's too much information. No, you'll have to keep on practicing, Bri.
I will do.
And you never know. You might get a call one day from someone.
Yeah. Funny, a segue into a band that we thought I was a member of, but obviously I never got the call, which is Whitesnake.
Oh, here we go. Whitesnake News, episode 575. Yeah.
No, it was just one of the themes of the show that seems to be happening. Every other show is DC. He's done the deal for his his catalogue as well too, an undisclosed figure, I may add. So DC has let the 50-year catalogue of all of his Whitesnake and Deep Purple stuff gone. So everybody's in the act now.
Yeah, I saw that. I assume it's just obviously his portion of the royalties, or whatever you want to call it, the rights to Deep Purple and Whitesnake, because a lot of them, of course, were written with Richie Blackmore and Moody and Marsden and Doug Aldrich and so on. So, yeah. Well, I mean, why wouldn't you? If you've got a back catalogue that's worth $200 million, well, bring it on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where do I sign?
Yeah.
I think, as you said, we should maybe start writing some songs. Pretty sharpish. And so maybe we'll give Sony a ring and say, look, are you interested?
Yeah, here's all of these great songs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Makes an offer.
And now that Ronnie James Dio's not here, we can bring back Dungeons and Dragons, can't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure we can rustle up some Dungeons and Dragon based songs without too much trouble. Right. No, that's interesting. Yeah.
How about you? What's been?
Luck, DC.
Yeah. What about you? So
I've been to a few gigs. I've been to some gigs, and you can probably tell by my voice. I was at a gig last night. This voice is from singing, Your Honour, and not anything to do with boozing. I went to see. Last weekend I went to see the Choir Boys, who are. I think I put on the Facebook page, always great value and a great show. They're in great form down in Brighton. And they were supported by the Troy Redfern band. They were good. Quite kind of Hendrix influence, but well worth a look, 3-piece. Mm-hmm. And then last night I went with some friends of ours to see John, Sue, Matt, to see the Mighty Saxon at Hammersmith Odeon.
Saxon? Who's that? Saxon?
Saxon.
From Yorkshire.
They are from Yorkshire, from Barnsley to be precise. And there was sort of mini indoor festival, I suppose you could say. The mighty Diamond Head. I might have mentioned it a couple of times. They opened the proceedings at 6:00. I mean, and it was a long night in lots of ways, and then followed by they were great as always. Did a fairly truncated set. Girls' School.
I saw some footage on Facebook of Girls' School. They sounded really good.
They were good. The problem was it was as they remarked, no one had a sound check, so they basically all just sort of plugged in and started playing, which even with your limited musical experience, you'll know is not necessarily the best thing to do.
No.
And then Uriah Heep, who I think you and I have sort of partially seen a couple of times over the years. But I watched the entire set and they were really good. They put on a great show. Uriah Heep did a lot of songs from their back catalogue. Look at Yourself and Gypsy and July Morning. I'm only saying these, so you can put them on the old playlist, of course. They were good. And then, of course, Saxon were huge. I mean, they had a massive stage show. They are back on tour later on this year in the UK through November. A proper tour, like the old days. I think you're doing about, 20 dates, supported by Diamond Head. There you go. Yeah. So I shall try and get on to one of those gigs, of course. And they were great. Saxon, fantastic. When you think that they were formed in the mid-70s. Their first album was 1979, and they are very prolific, very consistent, put on a great show. Really, I mean, they're no spring chickens, bless them, but the energy and the performance was just fantastic. So good on you, Saxon. Great night. And a lot of fun was had by all.
And the new album, I haven't heard it yet. I think you'd fall off. Diem. Yeah, I think you'd fall off a chair if I turned around and said, I've been listening to the new Saxon album. It's getting a lot of rave reviews. We talked about the covers album that they did last year, which I was really surprised with. I think we both thought it was a really, really good album. And from what I gather with Carpe Diem, the way in which it's sounding in the production, I think Biff's been involved in the production of it as well too. It's supposed to be, and Andy Sneap, he's co-producing it with Biff. It's supposed to be a big sounding record. So. Yeah,
no, I would recommend. I mean, even if you're not a Saxon fan, particularly, put on a great show. Go and see them, and of course you get the added bonus of Diamond Head on the November tour. Yeah. In the UK, I'm not sure about the rest of the world, of course, but no doubt they will be spreading the wings further afield as things open up a little bit.
And then other things as well too, which obviously we're at the beginning of the year, so lots of bands. Lots of bands are teasing new material and new albums. Obviously, Saxon have got their new album coming out, but a few notable mentions for new music. Swedish-Americana band called Rike, R-I-K-E. Our friend Brian Heason's a big fan. Their debut album came out in 2020, but they've just released a new single. It's stunning, and it's called The Reason. I'll stick it on the playlist. It's really good. FM, who probably a bit like, UFO and Saxon. Anytime you go and see FM, Steve Overland is probably one of the greatest melodic rock singers of all time. They've got a new album coming out called 13, and the debut single off Waiting on Love's coming out, and it sounds great. And the final bit of new music for me mentioned was obviously in Classic Rock magazine this month they talk about the 22 things to look forward to in 22, and obviously I was quite chuffed that King's X got a mention in Classic Rock about the tour this year. And lo and behold, Ty Tabor, who is the guitarist in King's X, has just announced his up-and-coming solo album. So solo album Shades coming out. He's released the single called Sister Genocide, and it is fantastic. Ty is a guitar player, and as a singer, he's 1/3 of King's X, so it sounds a bit King's X, but he goes his solo material is quite Beatlesy, quite power pop, and it's riff-laden, great stuff. So lots and lots of good music coming out. And the final one, Beth Hart. Beth Hart's got a Led Zeppelin tribute album coming out, and she's just released Black Dog. So it's good. It's nice that people are putting material out, and hopefully the likelihood that they'll be able to get it in tour later this year. So
yeah, absolutely.
Lots going on in music.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard a couple of songs off that Beth Hart album, and it is, it's good. She's a great singer, and she's doing those Led Zeppelin songs justice, as you would expect. Yeah, that's all good. Of course, we can't not mention the fact that earlier this year, in the last couple of weeks since we recorded the last podcast, sadly, Meat Loaf died, 74. I mean, a huge talent in every way, of course. The Bat Out of Hell album remains one of the greatest, and certainly one of the best-selling albums of all time. 40 million copies sold of just one album, which is just incredible when you think about it. And I would imagine most people that listen to this podcast will either have a copy or have had a copy. I think we've got two, one on vinyl, one on CD. But yeah, I mean, a sad loss. He'd been ill for several years. We talked about this sort of kind of feeling when Dusty Hill left us last year, and that someone like Meat Loaf is always there. Mm-hmm. Most of us grew up with we were children in the 70s and 80s, and Meat Loaf was there. The Bat Out of Hell album, the Dead Ringer album, the work with Cher, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. Is that what it's called? That song?
Yes, I think so.
Anything? Yeah, exactly. We never really found out what that was, did we? Probably just as well. But yeah, sad loss. Any Meat Loaf memories for you, Brian?
I remember we talked about this on the show. The very first patch on the back of my denim jacket as I was walking around Limavady was
strutting your stuff.
Strutting my stuff was the Bat Out of Hell album cover. That was. I think that was what I was allowed to have on the back of my. Back of my denim jacket. His best work was with Jim Steinman, and you can see where when Meat was going out in the 80s and not singing or not recording Jim's material, it just wasn't. I remember the album Midnight and the Lost and Found. It was on the Whistle Test, and obviously. You've got Kiss alumni and Bruce Kulick and Bob Kulick were both in his band, and he always had great musicians. Meat, but it just didn't hit the heights of Paradise by the Dashboard Light and Bat Out of Hell and Heaven Can Wait. On the flip side, whenever Jim recorded the album himself, the kind of Bat 2 album, which he sang on. Nobody wanted to buy it because you kind of the both of them were just meant to be together. My abiding memories of Meat. I never got to see him live, which is a shame because he was one of those artists who every time he did a tour, he seemed to be he left it all on the stage. Sometimes to his own detriment, where he would collapse on stage with complete exhaustion. I know. Famously, he played in Newcastle in the 2000s, and he came out on stage, and I think he lasted maybe 2 or 3 songs.
Oh, really?
And then there's an excellent documentary called In and Out of Hell.
Yep.
And you get a little bit of an insight into his regime. He's warming up. Good 2 hours before the show. He's doing vocals. He's doing breathing techniques. He's just. He was one of those singers. He just didn't rock up and have a drink of beer and out on the stage. He was very very serious about his craft because he was a performer. He's a musical theatre, with Hair and obviously Rocky Horror Show. There's not many people who commit themselves on stage as a front man. He's not Freddie, but. In his heyday, I think you must have said. No, I was going to say you've talked a few times about 1983 and going to Monsters of Rock. So you would have seen him on that.
I did.
Bill.
Yeah, I did see him.
How was he?
I saw Meat Loaf. Yeah, it was a strange. He didn't go down very well, if I'm honest. No, 83. Right. And he was kind of sandwiched between I think Dio and. Maybe Twisted Sister or something like that. I can't remember. Yeah. It's ZZ Top, I think. So he was, I mean, for the kind of fairly metal audience of Download or Donington 80, Monster Rock 83. Yeah, he didn't. I think he, unfortunately, was showered with bottles, which is quite sacrilegious, really.
It really is. Yeah.
There were people on Facebook saying, now that he's died, I feel terrible about throwing a bottle at him in 1983. I thought, well, you shouldn't have done it in the first place, should you? But they were, as we mentioned loads of times, those festivals were carnage. It was like the Somme, and plastic bottle wars.
I can't imagine ever doing that. I just can't imagine going to a gig and ever even thinking about chucking something at a performer or a musician. Going, I don't know. This beggars belief.
Well, it sadly happens, doesn't it? It happened a lot in the 80s because just people could take their own booze in and plastic bottles, and and used to see giant cans of beer flying through the air. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Yeah. And famously, of course, Def Leppard got we've gone off a tangent, of course.
As is our want.
Def Leppard got famously bottled off at the 1980 Reading Festival. And you think, Def Leppard, Meat Loaf, how dare you bottle off?
Yeah.
But it became a thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were bottled off. Yeah. They were rubbish. So we bottled them off. Terrible when you look back on it. But luckily that seems to have disappeared. That trend for bottling off.
Well, I suppose when you think about it in comparison now these days, the polite way or the politically correct way of doing that is obviously Britain's Got Talent. So you press a button with a big red X. So it's like, get off the stage. You're off the stage. Whereas in the 1980s, if you were at Donington, it was like you just got stopped. Can you imagine Simon Cowell chucking a bottle of?
No,
it's not happening.
Anyway, Meat Loaf, yes. sad loss, and as we've said with many others that have left us, of course they've left a huge legacy, which will live long, and hopefully for a very long time, people will be enjoying the music of Meat Loaf.
There you go.
So, what's happening in the world of podcasts? Not this podcast, of course. We know what's happening with our wonderful podcast. What's happening in the world of Neil Young? and Joe Rogan. What's going on there, Brian? Because it's sort of come and it's kind of grown out of nothing, that story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I think Neil Young.
He's not back with it coming forward when he's unhappy, though, is he?
He's not at all, and it can be with his former bandmates. I think he basically, does he not just go round Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and just fall out with everybody? It's their turn. No, I believe that Joe Rogan does a relatively wouldn't be as big as our podcast, but he's relatively well known in America.
I think he's got the world's biggest podcast, isn't he?
He has,
which I was surprised about because I thought you were up there.
Well, it's like 200. Is it like 200 million downloads a month?
He's a bit bigger than ours. Then
he's a bit bigger than ours. Yeah, I think basically Neil basically put an ultimatum to Spotify. It's either you can have Joe or you can have me, but you can't have both of us. I think he's made some comments on his show to do with the vaccine or COVID, and Neil has successfully Spotify have removed all of Neil's music, and Joni Mitchell, who's obviously a fellow Canadian. And Laurel Canyon alumni, she's asked to do the same. I think what was Apple Music couldn't help themselves at the point where Neil Young's music had been taken off Spotify. Apple Music's marketing team went into overdrive and said, "Apple Music, the home of Neil Young's music."
Oh my goodness. Oh. Well, he doesn't need the money, does he? Because he famously he was one of the first to sell his back catalogue.
Yeah.
For, what was it? I don't know, $200 million or $1 billion or whatever it was. I can't remember now. He's going back to the 70s. Always kind of stood up. Well, even the 60s. He was, if he wasn't happy with anything, he would we speak about it. Going back to Ohio, the song from 19 whatever it was, 68, 7 or something like that. Through to Southern Man and he's falling out with Barclay Carr. Do you remember that a few years ago?
Absolutely, yeah.
And,
we were there. I was there. I went to the show.
And talented guy though, Neil Young, of course, fantastic. It's a fantastic career. Anyway, that's enough about Neil Young.
Yes.
So that was news. And another, assorted waffle. Unless there's anything else, Brian.
No, there's nothing. There's no more assorted waffle. We've done all of the news.
Indeed. Well, that was good. So
I can't say it's a hashtag assorted waffle.
It's a hashtag assorted waffle time. Yeah. Assorted waffle. Yes. Right. That's trending now. I can sense it already. That's trending. The hashtag assorted waffle. Yeah. Anyway, where were we? So last time, I set you the task of talking about year 1998.
Yes.
Quite important year for me, actually. I've got to just mention my daughter Georgia. She was born in 1998, so I became a father for the first time. Hello, Georgia. Hello, Olivia. Hello, Sam. I've got to name check all of them. You see, because otherwise they won't be very happy. In fact, my daughter Olivia she said I enjoyed the podcast. She said I prefer Brian. I thought that was charming. She said she was listening to it. I'm not going to embarrass her by telling this story, but she won't mind. She said, I was listening to the podcast before I went to sleep. I couldn't get to sleep because I was laughing so much, which must have been your gags, Brian, I imagine.
I think not.
You are her favourite. Anyway, so 1998, important year for me. But over to you, Brian. Your year in rock.
My year, I was 29.
Were you? I wasn't going to ask. I sort of lost track, actually, of what age you were when. Were you, dare I ask, 20, you must have still been at university, of course.
I was probably doing my
halfway through, weren't you?
Yeah, I was doing my master's in procrastination at that point.
Yeah, how did that work out for you?
I'm still talking about it.
19, very good. I just all about your gags on this thing. Where were we? 1998.
98.
24 years ago at the moment, unless you listen to this podcast in 3 years' time, in which case it's 27 years ago. 24 years ago.
So
that's right, isn't it?
It is. But better than, I have to say. Do you remember the last show when I turned around and you said, "So who did you go and see?" and such, and I went to 2 gigs. I was much better in 98, I have to say.
Really? I didn't go to any. I didn't go to any. I think I must have been preoccupied with, changing nappies and stuff like that.
Yes, impending parentdom.
And it was fine. I'll do a minute. Anyway, where were we? So 1998. Over to you, Brian.
Yeah, I'll do gigs first. I'll do because I had some tumultuously amazing gigs in 1998. Yep. Yeah, I remember going to see Thin Lizzy. I saw Thin Lizzy. Yep, I saw Thin Lizzy at the Forum. They got back together in '98 and they did a couple of shows. John Sykes was fronting the band. It was the closest version of Lizzy without Phil Lynott in the band. They had Marco Mendoza was playing bass at the time. And John Sykes, it was John's first outing, really, as the band. They played the Forum in London. It's the only time I've ever been to the Forum. I really liked it as a venue. And 2 things I remember. I got the last T-shirt in the merch.
Really?
Yeah, I got the last T-shirt, and I still have the T-shirt to this day. And we met Yannick Gers.
Oh.
Yeah, I was there with my mate Stephen, and we met Yannick, and you've never met a nicer bloke. Yannick was standing there as a Lizzy fan. He was standing there chatting away. We bought him a pint of Guinness, and he was just the most affable chap. And you know the way you're standing with somebody really famous, and then you're kind of going, do we stay with Yannick Gers here at the outside the merch stand in the bar, or do we go down into the throng and get into the mosh pit with the Lizzy fans? So we left Yannick and we went.
Was he okay with that?
He was okay with that. He
couldn't turn around and say, lads are gone.
Hey, lads have gone.
Let's get on with them.
Yeah.
Seemed all right.
So that was saying that for me was saying that was that was the first time I saw Lizzy. I never got
really?
to see. Yeah, I never got to see Lizzie with Phil, unfortunately. So that was a great gig. But I got to see Jack Bruce and Gary Moore. They played in South Shields. And it was one of probably the loudest gigs I'd ever seen. Gary Moore was just, it was kind of the BBM album, the Baker Bruce Moore, or maybe it was Bruce Baker, whatever it was. BBM put out one album, and obviously it didn't last very long. Ginger was out of the band, and I got to see them in a little club in South Shields, and they blew the roof off the place, and they were great. So that was fantastic. That was probably the two standout gigs. Musically wise, 98 was an interesting year for me. I will kick off with King's X. King's X released their 7th studio album called Tapehead. Now, anybody who knows me and they know how much of a King's X fan I am, after Dogman, a few of the album releases that they had that came out probably didn't. I would say there was a return to form on Tapehead. Tapehead's a great album. Songs like Happy, Cupid, Hate You. There's some really good songs on it. So that's the first one off in 1998. Another album which I think you may either have had this artist as one of your hidden gems, or an album that is Richie Sambora's Undiscovered Soul album. I know you liked the debut album, which was is that Strangers
Stranger in This Town.
Yeah. So in 98 he released a second soul album. It was produced with Don Was. The lead off single, which was called Hard Times Come Easy, it's just a cracking American it's just a good pop rock song. It's a good Bon Jovi song. But Hard Times Come Easy.
The title track's a killer as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Made in America. It's just a really, really, really strong album, and because Don Was producing it as well too, it shows Richie of the singer that he is. I think a lot of people, obviously, Richie as a guitar player is renowned in the Bon Jovi space, but as a singer, I think when you get John and Richie singing together, a lot of the harmonies, they were great. So Undiscovered Soul, I'll stick a couple of tracks on it. And then the other album that I'll shout out in 1998 was, I seem to be a massive fan of John Corabi. So I think John Corabi obviously was latterly has been the lead singer in the Dead Daisies before Glenn Hughes is now the bass player. But John Corabi had been in Motley Crue. So whenever John parted ways with Motley Crue, and Bruce Kulick, who we mentioned earlier, who was in Meat Loaf's band, Bruce Kulick was in the 80s version of Kiss.
Yep.
So in 96, whenever the original Kiss band got back together, Peter Criss, Ace, who we'll get to see at Steelhouse later this year, which I'm very excited about. So when the original Kiss got back together, it was like, Bruce was at a loose end, so he put together a band with John Corabi. The band was called Union. Their debut album, it's of the era it's got a nice Hendrixy vibe to it. It's quite grungy in some bits, which suits. You think of the opening track, Old Man Wise. The first 4 tracks in the album, I'll put a couple of tracks on it. But as an album that came out, I was one of those. I listened to that album a lot in 1998. It was just, you were coming out of grunge. Grunge was probably dying out a little bit, wasn't it? Really,
Yeah.
The main grunge bands were, Pearl Jam were probably being a little bit more. The sound was changing, and I thought the Union album was probably just coming in at the back end of grunge, and of course I think they lasted a couple of albums. So that was kind of my 98 for a few of the big albums, and albums I still listen to today. If I'm being honest, I do listen to Richie. I do listen to I love John Corabi's voice. He's one of the great rock singers. So that was 98 for me. What about you? Any big?
Well, there were some good albums. You're right. Talking of Pearl Jam, they brought out their Yield album, which is, as we've said before, very prolific. Some great songs on that. Given to Fly is an absolute, one of the greatest songs Pearl Jam have done. So please do us all a favour and put that on the
playlist.
Playlist, please. The playlist. I almost forgot what it was there. Thank you. Are we still working with Spotify? I guess we have to, really.
Yes, yeah. I haven't fallen out with Joe.
Unless what we could do, we could burn a CD of the playlist and send it to all of our 12 listeners, one each. How about that? Except America, because that's across the match.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. We'll put it on the on the old playlist. Another album that came out that year, and I quite enjoyed digging back to these years because you remember, obviously, the times and the albums. Metallica brought out Garage Inc.
All right.
Which is, it's a good album. It's a covers album, essentially. Basically, most of the bands and acts on there were favourites of theirs or influenced them. I won't mention the fact that they put 4 Diamond Head songs on that album because they were big fans of Diamond Head. I won't mention that.
Thanks for not mentioning that.
I won't mention it. No, I'm not going to mention that. But Whiskey in the Jar's on there, the Thin Lizzy / traditional folk song. Which I actually really like the version they do on that. I know you probably don't as a purist. Tuesday Gone is obviously the Leonard Skinner song.
Yeah,
not obviously, but it is. My personal favourite on the album is Turn a Page,
the Bob Seger track. That's phenomenal version.
Their version is just because Bob Seger's song is it's Bob Seger, but Metallica really kind of metal it up, and Turn the Page on that album is just great. And true story, actually, Brian Tatler was able to pay off his mortgage with the royalties. I think he bought himself a house or something. So I don't know how I know that, but I know it.
And do you know somebody who we haven't mentioned?
Who?
Sir Vivian of Campbell for a while.
True.
Yeah.
How is Vivian?
Vivian's okay. Vivian's very good.
What made you think of him?
Because Killing Time,
Sweet Savage song, of course.
Which is a Sweet Savage song written. One of the writers of that was Vivian, and I think is it somewhere involved? I think there's an expanded version of Garage Inc. or sort of B-sides and stuff. But I do know that Sweet Savage get reasonable patronage from Metallica, and Ray has appeared with Metallica, as Brian Tatler has as well too. So there we go. Connection to Vivian. Yay!
I know. Yeah, that's what we like. We're only 7 degrees of separation from Vivian Campbell at any given time. And Maiden brought out Virtual 11.
And I've got neither of them.
Which was one of the 2 albums they did with Blaze Bayley.
Yeah.
And some good songs on that. Actually, they still do The Klansman, which is on that album, in the Bruce Dickinson, the current era. At least they do it a couple of years ago. A monster 9 minutes 53 seconds. The Angel and the Gambler. Some good songs. I was thinking about this. The Blaze Bayley era of Iron Maiden. It's a bit like when Judas Priest. When Rob Halford left Judas Priest. It must be quite awkward for the person who's come in. So Ripper Owens with Judas Priest and Blaze Bayley with Maiden, because you're kind of thinking, I'm the new guy. Does anyone like me? Are we just waiting for the old guy to come back when he's ready? And of course, in both cases, that's exactly what happened. And also, you could talk about John Corabi, similar situation in a way when Vince Neil came back to Motley Crue. But yeah, the output, the couple of albums they did, X Factor and Virtual 11, really good. Well worth a listen. And he's not Bruce Dickinson, but he's Blaze Bayley, and he did a good job on those 2 albums. What else is there?
Did you ever get to see that version of Maiden with Blaze live?
No, I never saw Blaze Bayley. I saw Paul Diano, and I've seen Bruce Dickinson a few times, of course, but no, I never saw Blaze Bayley. In fact, he was supposed to be playing at a festival I went to before Christmas, but COVID got the better of him, and I was quite disappointed about that because I would have liked to have seen him. Still got a monster of a voice, still a great performer.
Yeah.
And then finally, a band that we haven't mentioned.
Surely not.
Very much at all in the last 20 odd, whatever it is, 25 episodes. System of a Down brought out their first self-titled ST album called System of a Down, strange enough. And it's System of a Down, one of those bands that they're very metal, very heavy, but they're quite quirky as well.
Yes.
And they're really good value. I've never seen them live, but I've seen plenty of footage and I've got the albums and everything. But I don't know which one of these to choose, actually, because you never know with a System of a Down album. Spiders, let's go with that, off of that album. Okay. And if it's got some bad language in it, I apologise in advance.
Okay, thank you.
To our underage listeners. And my kids.
I was going to say.
So I do have a hidden gem, which I shall hold back.
Are we doing that now?
Not now. We'll do that later because there's a big build up for that, of course, as you know. And we're all looking forward to that bit. But we'll come to that in due course. And the other thing, talking about events in 1998, Rob Halford, singer of Judas Priest, came out as gay in 1998. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, fine.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
It's it's good on you for making it public, but everyone was fairly certain that he is gay, and good on him for coming out and making it public, and obviously he's moved on back into Priest since 1998 and goes from strength to strength. Very good on social media, Rob Halford, by the way, of course. But enough about Judas Priest. But I remember that came out on MTV. I think he didn't mean to actually mention it because he never. I think he was concerned about the reaction from the fans, of course. But I don't think, apart from a very sort of silly minority, I'm certain most fans were like, great, bring it on, come back to Priest. Yeah. So that was 1998 from my perspective.
Okay.
So next time.
Oh yeah, I always.
You remember that bit?
Yeah.
You see, you were struggling then, weren't you? I could sense it.
Yeah. I pick a year for you now. So
That's how it works.
That's how it works.
So we've got a few left.
Right. So I'll give you a year now, Matt. So the year I will give you is 2001 AD. A Rock Odyssey.
Really? Okay, Space Odyssey.
Yeah, I've never seen it. Never seen the film.
Well, it's good. You should check it out. Yeah. It's stood the test of time. Stanley Kubrick, I think it was about 1968.
All right.
And all about HAL, of course, the onboard computer.
Exactly.
Check it out. Anyway, so 2001. Thank
2001
you
for you next time.
Next time. We'll do.
Okay, so as you know, we always like to celebrate with our listeners all around the world when it's special days and special occasions and special events. So in Scotland last week, it's kind of in and around, we've got Burns Night, which is the celebration of the life and poetry of Robert Burns, or as we know him here, Robbie Burns. So an author of many a Scots poem, and please do not ask me to recite any of his poetry. So in celebration of...
I know one, actually. I know one.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you. Isn't there?
In honour of Robbie Burns' night here in Scotland, we decided that we would celebrate Scottish rock music, Matthew, and pick some of our favourite Scottish bands through the years, which wasn't too difficult, was it?
No, there's some great acts over the years, and of course we would ask our listeners if we've overlooked anyone. Yep. Feel free to let us know on Facebook and Twitter at FT80pod, of course.
Exactly. Who are you going to kick off with then? Who's your?
So I think we go back, start maybe back in the sort of 70s.
Okay.
And work our way forwards.
Yeah.
When I was young, I remember the Alex Harvey Band on Top of the Pops.
And Whistle Test.
And Whistle Test, indeed. Oh, an amazing version of Delilah.
Absolutely.
On Whistle Test.
Yeah.
Boston Tea Party was their hit, of course.
The Healer.
Framed. That's a good song. But yeah, I mean, they were kind of, I suppose you call them rock, the sensational Alex Harvey Band, but with humour as well. And sadly, Alex Harvey left us quite young, only in his early 50s, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, one of the finest exports of Scotland, I would say, the Alex Harvey Band. Memories of Alex Harvey Band, Brian?
For me, Alex Harvey, I will always remember watching. Delilah is one of those tracks I remember on Whistle Test, but the Faith Healer, that's probably my favourite Alex Harvey track. But I think what's the legacy or the interesting, how I got to Alex Harvey was through some of the band members, because the Alex Harvey Band, obviously Chris Glenn and Ted McKenna were in the Michael Schenker group, and then obviously Ted McKenna went on and played drums when Rory Gallagher went more rock in the late Top Priority album. Ted played the drums in that. So there's quite a lot of and then obviously Zal Clemenson, if you remember. I remember watching. It's the scary things that you remember watching. You know, I was scared of Doctor Who and the music of Doctor Who. I was also genuinely scared of Zal Clemenson when he was in his Joker outfit.
Yeah,
it was quite sneery and whatever. So that would be my memories of Alex Harvey, but very critically acclaimed. And I think as a live outfit, they were incendiary. You know, they were just, he would have been in that sort of musical theatre, but probably, can I say, Meat Loaf-ish in terms of really performed it. Wouldn't have been the most amazing of operatic singers, but he was committed to his performance. So yeah, great band, Sensational Harvey Band.
How about you? Going back in time?
Going back in time, the band that again in the 70s, and this was a band that was just formed up the road from me in Dunfermline, which I thought he had an amazing voice, and not many people cover Nazareth. You know, Nazareth. Dan McCaffrey is just a phenomenal singer. Obviously, connections with Deep Purple, and I think Roger Glover produced some of their early materials, but obviously their seminal album recorded in 1975, which was called Hair of the Dog, which is the title track, and then they also did the cover version of Love Hurts.
Yeah.
So I think if you were buying rock anthems, rock anthems in the 70s and 80s, every compilation album had either Love Hurts or Blinded by the Light by the Man from Man's Band.
It's true.
But he was a great singer, Dan McCaffrey, and he's 75. He's retired from Nazareth now. And he plays now and again. So certainly in these parts in Scotland, Nazareth are very well held in high regard as one of those bands. I suppose they never really made it, but
not really. No, I mean they were quite successful in the charts. This Flight Tonight, of course, was a big hit.
Yeah,
and as you say, Love Hurts. You know, you'd see him on Top of the Pops every few weeks. But yeah, Dan McCafferty, I mean, he was that kind of Bon Scott, Jimmy Barnes kind of gravel-throated singer, but I mean, unique in a word. I mean, you could compare him to those guys, but a unique style in himself. Yeah. And as you say, no longer with Nazareth, but yeah, again, a great legacy. Talking of AC/DC, by the way. Sort of Bon Scott.
Well, it's not a tenuous link.
Well, not really, but I mean, I would say I think AC/DC themselves is a tricky one, because in the 70s, I mean, essentially they were formed out of Scottish expatriates, went to Australia. Bon Scott, Ronald Belford Scott, was born in Kirramuir, which is not too far from you.
Not at all.
And the reason he was called Bon is because he was, he kind of scored in Bonnie, Scotland, because he was, so Scottish, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And of course, the Youngs were emigrated to Australia when they were very young. So I would. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because they are traditionally linked with Australia, but certainly they had Scottish heritage. And I think, if you were Scottish, you'd probably stake claim for AC/DC as being one of your greatest exports.
Yeah.
And you've only got to look at that footage from Glasgow Apollo that was the basis of the For Those About If You Want Blood album.
Yes.
And they're there in their Scottish football shirts and very patriotic and very dear to their roots. So I would say with some justification you could add AC/DC to that Scottish, the best of Scottish list.
It bolsters up the roster quite well, doesn't it?
It does. It does. But there were certainly other individual performers. You've mentioned a few thousand times on this podcast that you're a fan of Thin Lizzy, and of course Brian Robertson, famous fellow of Glasgow, I think. Brian Robertson,
yes.
Robbo, also in Motorhead, of course. Briefly in the early 80s, but an amazing guitarist. I mean, he joined Lizzy at quite a young age, wasn't he? He was only in his early 20s when he was.
I think it's earlier than that, Matt. I think Brian Robertson joined Thin Lizzy when he was 17.
Wow!
And he actually came down. He wasn't a guitar player. He originally was a drummer.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was a drummer first, and then he switched over. He switched over to guitar because I think at the time, obviously Eric Bell had left Thin Lizzy, and Phil Lynott famously sort of said, "We're not going to get ourselves in the position where we're, if the guitar player goes, we can't gig. Therefore, you get two guitar players." Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson. Brian Robertson was definitely 17 when he came down to from Glasgow to audition for Lizzy, and he was a precocious young man and got the gig.
Like it.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't mention Brian Robertson without linking to Frankie Miller. Of course.
What
a voice.
Yeah, it's Frankie Miller. Obviously, he's best known. For he had an album. 1977 called Full House. Obviously, for those people who his one of his big singles would have been Darling, but he duetted on the Thin Lizzy, and the studio version of Still in Love with You. He sort of co-sings it or duets it with Phil Lynott. I can't go past. We talked about it when we were talking about the Thunder live album at the Brooklyn Bowl. Be Good to Yourself is just he's just a phenomenal singer, and he was recording he as a writer, obviously it was probably in the late 70s, Matt, was when he was at his peak as a singer and performer. But in the latter years, he was more of a songwriter. Wrote a lot of his material went into country, so he was writing for the likes of the Bellamy Brothers, but people like Bob Seger, Rod Stewart. He obviously at the time in the 90s, he was planning to put a band together with Joe Walsh. So Joe Walsh is a big fan of Frankie. And I know when they've done tribute concerts for Frankie, I think it was 92, they were putting together a band. And then obviously, sadly, Frankie had a brain aneurysm. And obviously he's now, he's not able to speak, and he's obviously not able to sing. But he is thought of very, very fondly as kind of like a blue-eyed soul. Yeah. Again, it's that rasp of the voice. It's that Dan McCafferty, Jimmy Barnes, Frankie Miller. Just he's just up there. He's a phenomenal singer. Not many people cover "Be Good to Yourself" do it well.
No. Well, Thunder did a good job of it.
I do. Yeah. Hats off to Danny. He did a really good job. So yeah, great singer, Frankie Miller.
Don Airey and of course young Neil Murray, who is actually Scottish.
I'm still flabbergasted by that.
No, they are. Both of them Scottish. Well, you met Don Airey, haven't you? Was it you bumped into him at the bar in Brixton Academy?
A chicken foot, yes.
Chicken foot, yeah. And what did you say to him? You're Don Airy.
Yeah, I did. And yes.
Is that all you're going to say on that subject?
Well, it was more the fact that we were at the merch stand. we were at the merch stand, and it was just Dawn and I at the merch stand, and I'm like going, "You're Don Airy," and then as you do, the best way that I can tell Don Airy that he's Don Airy is by reminding him of all of the bands that he's been in.
Yeah, I bet you enjoyed that.
Yeah. Oh, Gary Moore, MSG.
He may have forgotten he was in Rainbow.
Yeah. But then, of course, I'm then trying to convince the young girl in the merch stand. Whenever Dawn's trying to pass over his well-earned money to the girl for the chicken foot top that he was buying, I kept saying her, "You do know who this is? Do you?" And she's maybe 20,
yeah,
and she's going, "Who?" Embarrassing, Matt.
Yes, well,
me and celebrities.
Yes, indeed.
What about going about? What about? So we've done the 70s. Any bands in the latter days of the 80s, 90s?
Well, I mean, one that stands out is Gun, of course.
Great band.
We've seen plenty of times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quality output over the years. There are a few changes in lineup over the years. But yeah, I mean, they've done some great stuff. They're renowned for their covers of their cover of Well Up Cameo, which is we should do probably best covers. It shouldn't be best cover version at some point, but certainly their version of that. Better Days is a great song as well. They've done some great stuff over the years. Saw them a few weeks ago. They were on a high because Scotland had just qualified, I think, for the playoffs of the World Cup. I think it was. Uh-huh. So they were on a high that night, and they showed it. They did some great. They are a great band, and they've done some good stuff over the years.
Yeah, no, they are a great band. And another cover that they do, and it's one that I've covered as well too, is they do "Everyone's a Winner" by Hot Chocolate. And it's a cracking version of it. It's really nice heavy version of it. They probably the biggest band to ever come out of Kilmarnock would be my next band to shout out, which is Biffy Clyro. I've been lucky to see Biffy a few times. They obviously the big single that came off that they're, I suppose, renowned for is "Many of Horror," which I think was it one of the X Factor or Pop Idol.
Oh, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they murdered it. They murdered it on the X Factor, didn't they? That's right. I remember.
You sort of go, sorry, here's a great rock song. But anyway, I'll put some their double album Opposites is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite albums of theirs. So big fan of Biffy Clyro. Really, really good. Go from strength to strength.
And bigger than people imagine. I mean, it was headline download once or twice. I saw them on the same bill as the Foo Fighters at Milton Keynes back in 2011.
Yeah.
Very reluctant to wear shirts on stage, I seem to recall. Come rain or come shine, they're just there, bare-chested, tattoos.
Yeah.
But yeah, good band. Yeah, good sound, good band. Coming a bit more up to date, we've seen Mason Hill several times.
Yeah.
Good young Scottish band. And also in the same vein, although been going a little bit longer, is King King. Now, King King are essentially a Scottish band, fronted by Alan Nimmo, who's a great singer, very much in the sort of, dare I say, the David Coverdale, bluesy mould, but yeah, a lovable, larger than life character. Always plays in a kilt, and great guitarist, good singer, and they've done some great stuff over the years. I mean, songs like Rush Hour. Oh God, put that on the list, please, Brian.
Noted.
I will not fall. Never Give In. They've done some great songs. Waking Up. So yeah, King. I mean, again, if they're on tour, which they will be on tour this year, I imagine they've got a tour plan. Go and see them, because they put on a great show, and we saw them with Europe, didn't we?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Yeah,
that was an eclectic, wasn't it? Europe and King on the same bill, but good band as well. We've overlooked Fish, Brian. We should have mentioned Fish quite early on. Of course, one of the still going strong from the 80s when he was with Marillion.
Yeah.
Of course, you like a bit of Fish, don't you?
I love a bit of Fish,
Yeah.
especially on a Friday.
Indeed, yeah. Well, it's traditional day, really, isn't it?
Fish. That early. Again, I've always said it. The Marillion period that is my favourite period is the Hogarth period. I like all of that. That's when I got into it. But the more that I go back into the back catalogue of Marillion, Misplaced Childhood is just, it's a masterpiece. I know you've got Kaylee and the big singles and stuff, but as a collective work of an album, it's probably one of Marillion's complete pieces. I could listen to that album the whole way through, and it's just his delivery. Sometimes Fish can just spit out lyrics. That's sort of, he's great performer.
So you're going to put something on there from Vigil in a Wilderness of Mirrors, no doubt. My personal favourite from his recent catalogue is a song called Man with the Stick.
Okay.
Or Man with the Stick. Check that out. And he's adapted his voice, as I think we said before, actually. Yeah. The older he's got, he's adapted his voice and his style, and he's I think he's coming towards the end of his career. I think probably the Vel Schmerz album that he released in 2020 will be probably his last, I would imagine. But
I would say so.
Yeah, he's left a great legacy, and if you get a chance to see him, well worth checking out. Bit of a character. I went to a meet and greet with him once, actually, when we were in Marrakesh a few years ago, and he is he likes a cigarette. I don't know if he's given up now, but he did sort of chain smoke through the entire meet and greet, and he's very liberal with the old F-bomb. Apart from that, he's a very likeable character. Well, not apart from that, he's a very likeable character. But yeah, check out Fish.
And my final one, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all.
Final. I could not do a list of Scottish bands without mentioning this band, because at a time I thought this band was the greatest live band about, and that would be Big Country. Big Country were one of those bands where, as a headliner, and I probably saw them in clubs and theatres, City Hall, Hammy O type, sort of smaller theatres.
Yep.
But then if I went to a festival or Slane and it was David Rolling Stones or whatever, they were always on the bill and they always put a great show on. And Big Country, to me, whether you class them as they got rockier latterly in their career. Probably the rockiest single that they had was King of Emotion, which was on the Peace in Our Time album. But Big Country were, as a live act, there was a time when they were just untouchable for me as a band. So for any of our listeners who haven't listened to any Big Country, I'll check them out. They did some fantastic stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that was the best of Scottish. And there's some good acts in there.
Yeah.
We've probably missed one or two out. So if you think we have, please drop us a line.
Will do.
Or ping us on Facebook or on Twitter at FTATpod. We need a few more followers on Twitter. So, maybe it's time for you to come and, boys and girls, to come and follow us on Twitter at FTATpod. So, Brian, we come to the part of the show which, if we're honest, most people just, they just fast forward to this when they listen to it. I told you about that little old lady who stopped me in the street recently and said how much she enjoys this part, how much she likes you, of course. They all seem to like you. I don't know what it is. I saw someone yesterday and they said, to my face. They said, no, I much prefer Brian to you. I said, it's charming. It's just lovely. I don't know what I've done to upset them.
Exactly. Well, it's like the Monkees. You know, I'm Davy Jones and you're Mickey DeLenz, aren't you?
Yeah. I hope you said Mickey DeLenz then. I'm more Michael Naismith.
I was going to say you're the studious one. You could rock a woolly hat, couldn't you?
Absolutely. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Hidden gem time.
The main event.
Indeed. Well, what you got for us, Brian?
Oh, so it's me going first. Oh,
it's always you first.
It's always me first. So
25 episodes, and it's always been you first.
Okay. A track by a band called Hoobastank. Do you remember Hoobastank?
I do. Yeah.
They're kind of in that post-grunge alternative rock. It was kind of around the late 90s, early 2000s. So you had I suppose you were talking about Symptom of a Down. You'd had Korn, even Nickelback, Three Doors Down, all of those bands. So my hidden gem is Hoobastank's album, which is called The Reason. It's an absolutely phenomenal track. It came out in 2003. Obviously, the title track, The Reason, it peaked at number 3 on the US Billboard. I'll stick it on the playlist. But my favourite track on the album is a track called Disappear. It is just when it came on the playlist, I thought, I haven't heard that for years. And I just dove straight back into the album. And yeah, my hidden gem for this episode is the Hoobastank album. Released in 2003, The Reason. There you go.
Very good. Yeah, good song. I remember The Reason. That's a great song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look forward to that. Yeah, as you say, nice to hear them again. Hoobastank.
Yep, Hoobastank.
What a name, eh? Who thought of that? Hoobastank.
Yeah.
Well, having said that, talking of strange names, my hidden gem for this time, episode 25, is the third album by a little old American band called Hootie and the Blowfish. Now, I have mentioned Hootie and the Blowfish a couple of times. Can't even say it, but I mention it. I have mentioned Hootie and the Blowfish a couple of times. Yeah. I've been a fan of theirs since the mid-90s. And this album came out in 1998, which, if you recall from about an hour ago, is your year in rock for this year. And the album in question is an album called Musical Chairs, which is probably my favourite album by Hootie and the Blowfish. I told you they have got an odd name themselves, of course. Favourite songs: I Will Wait, Michelle Post, which sounds a bit Crosby, Stills and Nashy, but still good. Only
Crosby, Stills and Nashy.
Hashtag Crosby, Stills and Nashy. And Only Lonely. Oh, gee, what a song. So, and what's going on here, which is one of the sort of latter songs in the album. I mean, I couldn't name the whole album, but those 3 or 4 songs are absolute gems. Hootie and the Blowfish, Musical Chairs from 1998. Do you remember them? Do you remember that album?
Not at all. No. Hootie and his Blowfish just passed me by. I obviously only Wanna Be With You is the only song that I know of Hootie and the Blowfish. I know you're a big fan. I will. Well,
yeah, they are. I mean, the classic Americana, aren't they? Really, they just kind of tapped into that whole kind of zeitgeist in the mid '90s. Kind of, 4 guys, band formed in college, good, solid kind of, non-threatening rock songs, a little bit of kind of political.
No, non-threatening.
Well, they're not exactly System of a Down, are they? But and in some cases, it's kind of political edge.
Okay.
Yes, it's a good songs. I mean, I say Hidden Gem. They probably sold about 50 million copies that album, but I'm going for it anyway. From 1998, Hootie and the Blowfish, Musical Chairs.
There we go. That's
it.
That's it. Hidden Gem time. Oh no, I'm sorry. You've copyrighted.
Well,
that.
you can try. I don't think you can do it quite as well as I can.
I can't. No.
You can have a go there.
No, it's your thing.
Yeah, thank you. So that was it, Brian. Another one bites the dust.
Another one. Show 25.
So Van Sank.
Yeah.
We're doing the best of French next time, then. We're doing a St. Valentine's Day special, aren't we? We've even started to plan in advance. We're getting so good at this, so slick. So the next podcast in a couple of weeks.
It's a David Coverdale special. It's all the songs.
It's my songs about love.
It's the love episode.
It's the love episode. I'll be talking like David Coverdale the whole way through. It's St. Valentine's Day. Anyway, where were we? So that's the next time. Anyway, till then,
exactly.
One thing to say, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We've had a few, some nice ones recently, thank you. Please follow us on Twitter at FTATpod. And, but in general, just keep listening and keep telling us what you think of the show and all that. I went back to Tony Iommi then. Let us know what you think. We'll take it on board.
Yeah, and we do the Facebook thingy powered by Meta. It's now.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, indeed.
So yeah, we're on Facebook as well too, and as Matt says, you can check us out there. Kelvin is looking after all of our social media on Twitter as well too.
Yep.
I suppose that's us, mate. That's a wrap. Good to see you.
That is indeed. Yeah, you tell a friend and
go and have a lie down. Go and have a lie down now after your hijinks out last night, seeing Saxon and all of Biff's pals.
Yeah, it was a good night, and I am paying for it today.
Exactly.
But it was well worth it. All right, my friend. Thanks everyone for listening. Take care of yourselves. Be safe, and we will speak to you all soon.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye now.
For those about to pod, We Salute You is a Maley Rogers media production.